Good morning, students. Today I am going to start molecular biology. Molecular biology is the major chunk, and I will be dealing with DNA packaging, replication, transcription, and translation. Now the competency which we have to achieve is describe the processes involved in replication and repair of DNA, transcription and translation mechanisms. To achieve this objective, we have to understand DNA packaging, define replication, enumerate 4 salient features of replication, and understand the role of the enzymes and proteins involved in DNA replication, and so on. All these things I'll be covering. I'll try to cover in this class, except the last one, telomerase. Now you know this is a double-stranded helical structure of DNA. I'm not going to talk about the bases or the sugar or phosphate bonds. I want you to know some interesting facts about DNA. If you see this, the total length of all the DNA in a single cell is approximately 2 meters. So the total length of all the DNA in a single cell is 2 meters. It's amazing that this long DNA has been accommodated inside a very, very small nucleus, which is few microns in size. Now we have approximately 10 to the power of 14 cells in our body. If you unwrap all the DNA and if you take the length of all the DNA from all the cells, you can make 600 round trips between the sun and the earth. It is that long. And one more interesting fact is all humans, about 99.9% of the DNA sequences are the same. Only 0.1 is unique to each human being. The DNA in eukaryotes is linear and prokaryotes is circular. Now coming to DNA package and compaction. See, what happens is when the DNA is present inside the nucleus, we call it as nuclear material. We don't call it as DNA, but we call it as nuclear material. Nuclear material, in other words, chromatin or chromosomes. We use the term interchangeably. So what is chromatin? Chromatin is nuclear material. It's composed of DNA and basic proteins like histone in almost equal amounts. So it is dispersed randomly throughout the nucleus in non-dividing eukaryotic cells. So when it is not dividing, the chromosomal material is scattered, dispersed throughout the nucleus. So we call it as chromatin. The same thing, during mitosis, it condenses into well-defined rod-shaped structures. We call it as chromosomes. We call it as metaphase chromosomes. So either chromatin or chromosome, both of them are DNA complex with basic proteins like histones. Now we have to see what are histones. This is the packing material which packs the DNA very effectively inside the nucleus. So histone, we can compare this to the thread spool. This is the spool. Histones can be compared to the spool, and DNA can be compared to this thread which is wound around the spool. The histones are basic proteins which are rich in basic amino acids like lysine and arginine. They are positively charged. So they form ionic bonds with the negatively charged phosphate groups of the DNA. So this helps in efficient compaction and packaging. Function, you all know, it is efficient packaging and organization of DNA into chromosomes. Now histones, after translation, they undergo certain modifications like acetylation, ADP ribosylation, which regulate gene expression. Meaning, increasing gene expression means increasing the transcription and translation into proteins. Decreasing gene expression means decreasing the transcription and reducing the rate of translation into proteins. So these are the histones. Histones serve as packing material for the DNA. Now coming to the types of histones, we have 5 types of histones starting from H1, 2A, 2B, 3 and 4. Now these 4, 2A, 2B, 3 and 4, they are involved in formation of certain structures called as histone octamers. We will see in the next slide. So there are 4 levels of packaging of the DNA into chromosome. First level of packaging involves the formation of a structure called as nucleosome. Now nucleosome consists of a histone octamer. The word octamer means 8 molecules, 2 molecules each of 2A, 2B, 3 and 4. All these 8 molecules, they form a structure called as a histone octamer. DNA is wound around twice in a left-handed orientation around this histone octamer to form the structure called as nucleosome, which is 10 nanometers in diameter. By doing this, the DNA is compressed 7-fold. So this is the first level of DNA packing, that is formation of nucleosomes. Now we can see many such nucleosomes. When you see under the electron microscope, these many nucleosomes connected with a stretch of DNA, we call it as a linker DNA, on which H1 sits. So when you see under the electron microscope, they look like beads on a string. So this beads on a string is approximately 10 nanometers in diameter. First level of packaging, I have told you, formation of nucleosomes, DNA compressed 7-fold. Coming to the second level of packaging, it is the formation of 30 nanometer chromatin fiber. Here what happens, you can see each nucleosome, groups of nucleosomes bind around or coiled around each other to form 30 nanometers chromatin fiber. This causes 100-fold compaction or 100-fold compression of the chromosome. You can see how nicely it is folded. It is like taking a huge piece of cloth and folding 3 or 4 times so that it becomes small and it can fit into your pocket. So second level of packaging is the formation of 30 nanometer chromatin. Third level of packaging is the formation of 300 nanometer loops. The same chromatin fiber, they form loops around a protein scaffold. This is a protein scaffold. This is non-histone protein. So certain non-histone proteins are also involved in the packaging of DNA into chromosomes. So the third level of packaging is the formation of 300 nanometer loops. Now, all these happen in the non-dividing cells. We call non-dividing cells as chromatin. But when the cells prepare to divide, they undergo about 8,000 to 10,000 folds compaction and generate 700 nanometer chromatids Otherwise 1400 nanometer metaphase chromosome. Here after replication I am telling you, chromatid is 700 nanometer. After replication it becomes 1400 nanometer metaphase chromosome. So the net result of DNA packaging is DNA is compressed 8000 to 10,000 fold to become a metaphase chromosome. In non-dividing cells, it is chromatid, and in dividing cells, we call it as chromosome. So this is the overall summary. This is the naked DNA, 2 nanometers diameter. This becomes nucleosomes, which are otherwise called as histone octamers, looking like beads on a string. They are about 12 nanometers diameter. Then they become 30 nanometer chromatin fibers, 300 nanometer loops, and in dividing cells they are known as chromatids, 700 nanometers, and a metaphase chromosome looks like this, which is 1400 nanometers. This is only for understanding. You can see the next picture. This is very easy for you to know. This naked DNA, 2 nanometers, beads on a string, 7-fold compression, then 30 nanometers, which is 100-fold compression, condensed mitotic chromosome, ultimately 8000 to 10,000-fold compaction. So this is the text. I wanted it to be at the end so that you can just go through. This is for you to just understand. Now coming to the central dogma of molecular biology. Now I am going to start with the replication. See, this was proposed by Francis Crick, and he explained how genetic information flows from DNA to RNA to proteins. The first process is replication, where the DNA makes an exact copy of itself, and when the cell divides, the daughter cells get an exact copy. This is followed by transcription and translation. Coming to DNA replication. DNA replication is the process of copying and duplicating a DNA molecule. Now, before we go into DNA replication proper, I want you to understand certain basic facts about DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid made up of it's a polymer of deoxyribonucleotides, and they are formed of monophosphates. Let us say this is the deoxyribose sugar. These are the numbering of the carbon atoms. Phosphate is attached to the 5' carbon of the sugar, and this is the nitrogenous base. The 3-hydroxyl group is free. So we are more concerned about 3-hydroxyl group and the phosphate group attached to the 5' carbon. Now, if you see this is a 3,5 phosphodiester bond. In the previous slide, I showed you a free hydroxyl group at the 3' end. So this hydroxyl group forms an ester bond with a phosphate at the 5' end of another nucleotide. So usually what happens is any nucleotide which is coming in is added to the 3-hydroxyl group only. See, on this side 5' end 5-phosphate, 3' end is the hydroxyl group. Normally any new nucleotide coming in, it forms a 3,5 phosphodiester bond with this 3-hydroxyl group. So what happens is the chain the polynucleotide grows in this direction, meaning 5 prime, 3 prime direction. So please remember this. Now again, this is a double-stranded DNA structure. 2 points I want you to know. The molecule has direction and they are anti-parallel. If this is 5 prime, 3 prime, the other strand is 3 prime, 5 prime. If you have one strand, this strand can be used to synthesize another strand because of Chargaff's base pairing rule. So if you know that T is present in this strand, you know automatically that A is present in the other strand. Another thing you have to see, I have put this direction. You can see the 3-hydroxyl end. So as I told you in the previous slide, usually nucleotides are added to the 3-hydroxyl end only. To the 3-hydroxyl end only. Yeah. So this chain grows from 5 prime end to the 3 prime end. Now when you see this, the 3-hydroxyl end is here. So any nucleotide will be added here. So the chain will grow from from 5 prime to 3 prime. So this is how the chain grows. So what I am trying to tell you is, this you should remember, always any nucleotide is added to the 3-hydroxyl end. So the chain grows in 5 prime, 3 prime direction and they are anti-parallel. So before going into replication proper, I have made this very clear. Now coming to replication. What is replication? First you have to know the definition of replication. This is the process of copying of parental DNA to form daughter DNA which have exact identical nucleotide sequences. It is like twins. Identical nucleotide sequences. The purpose of replication is, during the cell division, each daughter cell should get an exact copy of the genetic information that was present in the mother cell. That is the idea why DNA should replicate. So, definition of replication is making exact copies with identical nucleotide sequence. Purpose of replication is so that each daughter cell, after cell division, they get an exact copy of the genetic information which is present in the mother. Coming to salient features of eukaryotic replication, semi-conservative. I'll explain these two in the next few slides. Replicates semi-conservative, replicates in the S phase of the cell cycle. I think you know about cell cycle. There are 4 distinct phases of cell cycle. So replication occurs in the S phase or the synthetic phase. Replication proceeds bidirectionally from the origin of replication. It is semi-discontinuous. DNA copying process, that is replication, is carried out with accuracy and very high fidelity. See, exactly you should copy. You should be very good at our enzymes. The replicative enzymes, they are very good at copying. When they are copying, they have a proofreading mechanism. Suppose the bases are added as dictated by the base pairing rule. Suppose the one strand has adenine. In the next strand, thymine is supposed to be added. But by mistake, if the enzyme adds cytosine, what it will do, after adding, it will again check. If it is a wrong base, it will edit the mistake that it has made. In other words, the enzymes, the replicative enzymes have proofreading activity and editing activity. So this we will discuss in detail later. Now, the DNA is replicated only once, but completely. The entire genome is replicated once and only once in the S phase, after which the cell will go into mitosis after a short gap period. So some of the salient features of eukaryotic replication is, it is semi-conservative. Replication takes place in the S phase of the cell cycle. It is bidirectional from the origin of replication, semi-discontinuous. The copying process has high fidelity and accuracy, and the DNA or the entire genome is replicated. Entire genome, whatever is there in the cell. Genome is the entire genetic information present in the cell. It is replicated. Next, we will go to the salient, some of the salient features of replication. One is semi-conservative, I told you. This is, let us say this is the parent DNA with the two strands. Now, during replication, it will separate. Why it is separating? Because it has to, the enzyme has to see all these bases, and then only it can add the corresponding bases. So this separates. One daughter strand is synthesized having this parental strand as a template, and the other daughter strand is synthesized having this parental strand as a template. So at the end of replication, you have two daughter DNA. One is this daughter DNA and the other one is this daughter DNA. Now if you see each daughter DNA, one strand has come from the parent, the other one is the newly synthesized strand, and both are anti-parallel in direction. So the parental DNA is not conserved as one entity. That is why we call it as semi-conservative. For you, you need not write all these things, only the word semi-conservative. This was explained by Michelson-Stall's experiment. I am showing you the parental DNA without any helical structure. Now these two completely separated. Usually it doesn't separate like that. This is only a pictorial representation. Now after replication, what happens? This daughter DNA is synthesized having this parental strand as a template, and this daughter DNA in red color is synthesized having this parent strand as a template. So you have two daughter DNA, one with the parent strand and with the new strand, and this is another daughter DNA. This is the parental strand and this is the newly synthesized strand. And if you see the daughter DNA, the genetic composition is the same as the parental DNA. So both daughter DNAs have the exact composition. So each daughter DNA has one parental strand and one newly synthesized strand. See, this is all only for explanation. What you have to know is, when we ask the salient features, you have to write semi-conservative. The parental strand is not conserved as one entity, and one daughter DNA has one parental strand and one newly synthesized strand. We come to the cell cycle. I think you have been taught. So the cell cycle, if you take, there are four distinct phases. The replication takes place during the S phase or the synthetic phase of the cell cycle. See, this is not replicated. This is the replicated chromosomes. Now, after replication, there is a short period during which any errors, mistakes made can be corrected, and this G2 period, the cell prepares itself for mitosis. During mitosis, the cell divides and the DNA goes into each daughter cell. See, it is what is here and what is here. So, you have to know only this part. I mean, to write. Understanding everything you will have to understand. So, replication takes place in the S phase, and G2 period is the period where the cell gets prepared for mitosis, and after mitosis it goes into a short resting period where the cell gets ready for replication. So, I will show you one more slide. Again, here just same thing. In the S phase, DNA replication takes place. In the G2 period, preparation for mitosis followed by mitosis. This is followed by preparation of DNA synthesis. Again, I am telling you, when I ask salient features, first point semi-conservative, second is this DNA replicates in the S phase of the cell cycle. That is all you have to know. Now coming to the requirements for DNA replication. We need brick and mortar. To build anything, we need brick and mortar. Substrates, you need deoxyribonucleoside triphosphates. Make a note of this. In the DNA, you have only monophosphates, but the substrates that are required is a triphosphate. Triphosphate means they have 3 phosphates, whereas in the DNA, whatever polymer, if they are polymers of deoxyribonucleoside monophosphates. So substrates are DNTP, deoxyribonucleoside triphosphates. So adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Then you need a template strand. Yes, we need a template strand because based on the bases present on the template only you can synthesize the daughter strand. Next is primer. Primer is a short segment of RNA with a free 3-hydroxyl end. I am repeating this free 3-hydroxyl end very often because the nucleotides are going to be added only to the 3-hydroxyl end. See, the replicative enzymes cannot initiate or start daughter DNA synthesis. They need a small primer, or this can be comparable to the glycogen synthesis. In glycogen synthesis, what happens? Glucose molecules are added to a pre-existing glycogenin molecule. It is like that. So primer is a starter molecule. It has a free 3-hydroxyl end and it's a short segment of RNA. So the polymerizing enzymes add nucleotides to the 3-hydroxyl end. Next, fourth requirement is the enzymes and proteins. This is the major chunk. So the requirements of DNA replication, first the substrates, then the template, primer, fourth are the enzymes and proteins. You have many enzymes and proteins of which only few I have mentioned. Protein A or DNA A protein. So the functions are given here. You definitely will not understand if I tell you now, but I'll read it out. So what happens is this protein will go and bind to certain areas on the parental DNA so that it can pull it out and make it as a single strand. Next is single-stranded DNA binding proteins. So what happens is this will go and bind to the single strand. The name itself suggests that. It will go and bind to the single strand and prevent them from rejoining or re-annealing. Once separated, the DNA is single-stranded will go and bind to the single strands and prevent them from rejoining. Helicases. Helicases will unwind the helical structure. Of course, this requires energy. So, processing unwinding of DNA ahead of the replication fork. Again, replication fork is a new terminology. I will explain it later. Then DNA primase. The word itself tells you that it is going to synthesize the RNA primer, which is a short segment of RNA with a free pre-hydroxyl end. We have another three requirements. DNA polymerase, major replicative enzyme. This enzyme only is going to add nucleotides and synthesize the daughter DNA. Topoisomerases. It relieves any torsional strain. When you unwind it, there will be supercoiling. Again, a new terminology you will not understand. I will explain it. So, topoisomerases to relieve torsional strain, and ligase. Ligase is like a glue. If two strands of DNA are separated, it will join the two pieces of DNA by forming 3,5-phosphodiester bond. So there are 7 requirements, starting with substrates, then template, then primase, what else we have? Protein, DNA, A protein, single stranded binding. I was talking about the requirements. The enzymes and proteins are DNA A protein, single stranded DNA binding proteins, helicases, primases, polymerases, topoisomerases, and DNA ligases. So now we have seen the requirements, 4 major requirements, and under enzymes and proteins we have seen 7 proteins that are involved in replication. These enzymes and proteins together, we have one word called as replisome. Now coming to the steps of DNA replication in eukaryotes, the first step is the identification of site of ORI, ARS. ORI means origin of replication, ARS means autonomous replicating sequences. So identification of site of ORI and separation of double-stranded DNA to form single-stranded DNA template. That is the first step of DNA replication in eukaryotes. See, I am not going to explain the DNA replication of eukaryotes and prokaryotes separately. The replication in eukaryotes is quite complex. So after talking about the DNA replication in eukaryotes, I'll just tell you the differences between eukaryotic replication and prokaryotic replication. Now we are seeing the DNA replication in eukaryotes. So first step we have seen. Second is the formation of replication fork. Third is DNA synthesis and chain elongation. Fourth is termination of DNA replication. And fifth is reconstitution of chromatin structure. The first step, identification of ORI and separation of double-stranded DNA to form single-stranded DNA template. What you are seeing is the parental DNA molecule which are going to replicate. Now, there are certain unique sites on the DNA which are AT rich. AT rich means they are rich in adenine, thymine base pairs. Now, certain proteins will go and bind to these regions and they will try to pull the two strands apart. Why they have selected these AT rich regions is because adenine thymine are bonded with 2 hydrogen bonds, whereas CG is 3 hydrogen bonds. So pulling this AT base pairs is comparatively easier. That is why these unique sites have been chosen as origins of replication. In eukaryotes, we have many such ORI. That's why we call them as autonomous replicating sequences. species. Whereas in prokaryote, there is only one origin of replication. So replication in eukaryote starts at a unique site called ori, rich in 80 base pairs. As I told you, a protein DNA, A protein, will go and bind to the parental DNA at these unique sites and causes local unwinding of the parental DNA so as to form replication bubbles. So binding of DNA, A protein, to unique sites causes unwinding or separation to form replication bubble. That means you are just pulling out the two strands separately. Now each replication bubble, if you see this is the bubble, they have two replication forks. This is one Y-shaped structure like this and like this. This is a Y-shaped structure. This is one replication fork and this is another replication fork. So one replication bubble has two replication forks and these are the sites of active DNA synthesis. Now you can see this purple color is the parental DNA and this is the daughter DNA. Now replication will proceed bidirectionally in this direction and in this direction. It proceeds bidirectionally and both the DNA, daughter DNA strands are synthesized simultaneously. So the replication is simultaneous. So simultaneously two daughter DNA will be produced. So as the daughter DNA are synthesized, all the replication bubbles will unite till the entire genome is replicated. The end result is formation of two daughter DNA molecules. The purple is the parental DNA and the blue color is the daughter DNA molecule. So just starting with this, replication starts at unique sites called as ori, which are rich in 80 base pairs. DNA A proteins are binding here with the formation of replication bubbles. Each replication bubble has two replication forks. The replication proceeds bidirectionally and the daughter DNA are synthesized simultaneously. So this is the first step, that is identification of ori and separation of double-stranded DNA into single-stranded DNA template. So this is the text. Next is the second step is formation of replication fork. This is a very, very significant step because this is the place where DNA is going to be synthesized. Now replication fork is the site of active DNA synthesis. It has four components. One is the helicase, which unwinds the DNA with ATP hydrolysis. Then ssDNA binding protein, single-stranded DNA binding proteins, they bind to the single-stranded DNA template. This also we have seen before. Primer, a short segment of RNA with the free 3-hydroxylase and DNA polymerase. These are the components of the replication fork. DNA helicase, S single-stranded DNA binding proteins, primer and DNA polymerase. Now we have to see there is a lot to be told about this particular enzyme, DNA polymerase. It has a lot of pluses and minuses. It's a major replicative enzyme, therefore we have to know about this. It is a template directed enzyme. If a template is not there, this DNA polymerase is useless. It cannot replicate at all. So a parental DNA should serve as a template. Responsible for synthesizing daughter DNA, that is what I have been telling you. Proofreading activity. Proofreading activity. As I told you, if the DNA polymerase adds a wrong nucleotide, it will check it and edit the mistakes by its 3 prime 5 prime exonuclease activity. You don't need to know this. You have to understand it. You can just proofreading activity and editing. This is the importance of proofreading. By proofreading, it can remove any abnormal or mismatched base. I won't say abnormal. If a wrong base has been added, it will remove it. Because of removal, it reduces copying errors. By reducing copying errors, it can reduce mutations. Because if the copying process is wrong, wrong information goes to the daughter cell and it can result in mutation. We will see that in detail. What copying errors does to a cell, we will see it under mutations. So by proofreading activity, you are removing the mismatched bases, reducing the copying errors and reducing the error rates millions of times, and you are preventing DNA damage. These are the plus points. Limitation or minus point of DNA polymerases, it requires a primer. It needs a starter molecule and it needs a free 3-hydroxyl end. Only if this is there, it will go and attach a nucleotide. Otherwise, it cannot. So what happens is, because only at the 3' end it is added, the chain synthesis and elongation has to take place compulsorily from 5', 3' direction only. So if it has to synthesize in 5', 3' direction, naturally it has to read the template in 3', 5' direction. So this you will understand when I'm telling about the synthesis. This is the most important point. Synthesis occurs only in 5', 3' direction due to limitation of polymerase activity. So these are the minuses, limitations. Now we have 5 types of eukaryotic DNA polymerases. The alpha one serves as a primase, that is synthesis of primer. Beta is used for proofreading and DNA repair. Gamma for mitochondrial DNA synthesis. Delta for lagging strand synthesis, a new term. Epsilon for leading strand synthesis, processive leading strand synthesis. Whereas E. coli have 3 enzymes. Polymerase 1, DNA polymerase 1 in E. coli, it is called as Kornberg's enzyme. Out of these 3, DNA polymerase 3 is the major replicative enzyme. So all this, whatever I have told you, is about DNA polymerase. Now we are coming to the replication fork. Now, as I told you, there are 4 components of the replication fork. One is the helicase, single-stranded DNA binding protein. You see how the helicase has unwound the DNA and this protein is holding the 2 jaws of the DNA separately. See, I remembered about dentist. When we go to the dentist, they keep our mouth wide open and put a clamp. Our jaws are wide open. Even if you want to close it, you can't close it. Why? To have access to our teeth. Like that, the enzyme have to have know what bases are there in these strands. That's why both are widely separated. So single-stranded DNA binding protein serves that purpose. This is the primer. Now, if you see the primer, one is placed here, anti-parallel to this template strand. The other strand cannot be placed like this because it is not anti-parallel. You have to know this is the primer should be placed in such a way the free 3-hydroxyl end should be here. So the 3-hydroxyl end is facing the replication fork in this case, And here the 3-hydroxyl end is away from the replication fork. So what happens is DNA synthesis occurs towards the replication fork in one strand, and DNA synthesis occurs away from the replication fork in the other strand. Why this is happening is because of the limitation of DNA polymerase activity. I told you it cannot add nucleotides to the 5' end. It can add only to the 3' end. So they are placed in such a way so that the nucleotides can synthesize the daughter strand like this and like this, anti-parallel to the template. That also you should remember. This is the DNA polymerase. So we have seen all the 4 components of the replication fork. The helicase which unwinds. Now the helicase has unwound this part alone. After this part is replicated, further unwinding will take place. Now we will see how DNA polymerase is going to extend and synthesize the DNA, daughter DNA. So now the DNA polymerase is going to get to work. It is going to add nucleotides here and elongate the chain in this direction. See, please keep your mute it off. All of you, please keep in the mute. Don't unmute it throughout the session. So now DNA polymerase will add the substrates. The substrates are deoxyribonucleoside triphosphate. It attaches the substrate to the 3' end of the primer and forms a 3,5-phosphodiester bond. And each time a nucleotide is added, a pyrophosphate is released. So though the substrate is a triphosphate, what is incorporated is a monophosphate. As I told you, DNA is composed of monophosphate. So though the substrate is a triphosphate, what is incorporated is a monophosphate with a release of pyrophosphate, and a 3,5-phosphodiester bond is formed. And the addition of bases, the sequence of bases that is added is dictated by the base pairing rule. So on one side, it is synthesized in this direction towards the replication fork, and on the other strand, it is away from the replication fork. So this part of the DNA is now replicated. Now the helicase has to further separate this part. Now we will see what happens. Now this strand has been separated and it has to be extended. Now, due to limitation of the polymerase activity, one strand, daughter DNA strand, is synthesized continuously in the 5', 3' direction from here to here. Whereas on the other strand, it is synthesized discontinuously away from the replication fork in 5', 3' direction. Now let us see. Now to synthesize a strand in the 5', 3' direction, it has to place a primer here with a 3-hydroxyl end. Now let us see what this primer does. So this primer synthesizes another stretch of DNA. Here it is synthesized completely. So I repeat, due to limitation of polymerase activity, one strand is synthesized continuously, whereas the other strand is synthesized discontinuously. So the discontinuous fragments, that is the primer along with the DNA, we call it as Okazaki fragments. You make a note of it. Both the strands are elongating in 5 prime 3 prime direction only. I think I am repeating it so many times. If you make a mistake, you had it. So now the next time again this double strand has to be unwound. See, it is unwound. Again on one side it is synthesized continuously. On the other side again a primer will come and again synthesis will occur. So you can see the strand that is synthesized continuously, we call it as the leading strand, which has only one primer. The strand which is synthesized discontinuously is called as the lagging strand, and it has many primers and many Okazaki fragments. So the chain elongation occurs till the entire DNA is replicated. So I hope I have made my point clear. Two things: DNA polymerase has proofreading activity. It elongates in the 5 prime 3 prime direction. Because of this limitation, the two daughter DNA strands are synthesized in different ways. One as a leading strand, the other as the lagging strand. This is just for information. Let us say this is the nascent daughter DNA which is growing with this end. A triphosphate, that is thymine triphosphate, is going to be added. So when it is being added, only one phosphate goes here, the two phosphates are removed. See, pyrophosphate is removed and a 3,5 at the phosphate group 5 is there, 3,5 phosphodiester bond is there. So this is the 3,5 phosphodiester bond. This G and T are connected by 3,5 phosphodiester bond, and this has a 3-hydroxyl end. So you can see the chain is growing like this, 5 prime, 3 prime. So this is the text. DNA polymerase adds nucleotides. You have to put it as deoxyribonucleoside triphosphate. We have to add a small d here. Chain elongation occurs in this direction. The sequence of the nucleotides added dictated by Chargaff's rule. Each time a nucleotide is added, pyrophosphate released, and they are synthesized differently, one as the leading strand, one as the lagging strand. So our chain synthesis and elongation is complete, which that is a major part of the replication. So that is why, because they are synthesized in different ways on different strands, we call it as semi-discontinuous. One side continuous, the other side discontinuous. So we call it as semi-discontinuous. This is only for you to sit quietly and analyze the whole replication bubble, because I have been teaching you one half of the bubble, that is one replication fork. If you see the whole replication fork, this is what it looks like. See, this is the parental DNA. On this side, as a whole 5 prime to 3 prime direction. The whole bubble like this, it goes anti-parallel to the parental DNA. On this side, what happens? You can see 5 to 3, anti-parallel to this parental DNA. This is for you to sit quietly and analyze. Now we have to remove the primers. So let us say we are on the lagging strand, and so many RNA primers are there. For sake of convenience, I have shown only one primer. The primer is removed in eukaryotes by an enzyme called as ribonuclease, RNase. So there will be a gap. Now what this chain, the DNA polymerase enzyme, will continue its activity. The resulting gap is filled by DNA polymerase activity, and a small nick that is remaining, it is sealed by a ligase enzyme by formation of 3,5-phosphodiester bond. You need not draw all this. What you have to say, the RNA primers are excised, the gaps are filled by polymerase, and the nick is sealed by ligase. That is all you have to say. You need not draw this diagram. This is for the sake of understanding. Next, we are going to terminate the DNA replication, because after entire genome is replicated, it should not go into a second cycle. So DNA replication will continue till all the replication bubbles will meet and the entire genome is replicated. The entire mammalian genome, it takes about 9 hours to replicate, in contrast to prokaryotes which replicate in just 30 minutes. So this is the fourth step, I think. It is the termination of DNA replication. The last is reconstitution of nucleochromatin. See, DNA is not existing as naked DNA inside the nucleus. It is existing along with the histones. So during S phase itself, histones are also synthesized, and both histones and DNA will associate to form a chromatin structure. So this is the last step, reconstitution of nuclear chromatin. This is all regarding the steps of replication. So first is, what is the first step? I don't want to unmute you. So the first step is identification of ori and separation of the double strands to form single-stranded DNA, then formation of replication fork, then chain synthesis elongation, then comes what is the next step? 1 minute. Termination of DNA replication, then reconstitution of nuclear chromatin. So with this, I have completed replication. Now I have to go for another 3 to 4 slides. Please bear with me. Inhibitors of eukaryotic DNA replication. All these inhibitors, they serve as anti-cancer agents. So they can be inhibitors of DNA synthesis, or they can be inhibitors of replicative enzymes, or they can be inhibitors that interact directly with the DNA. If you take the inhibitors of DNA synthesis, most of them are nucleoside analogs. You would have studied about nucleoside analogs in the previous classes. 6-mercaptopurine, 5-fluorouracil, cytosine arabinocyte. All these, when they are incorporated into the growing chain, they cause premature termination of chain elongation. We have one more inhibitor, another inhibitor, folate antagonist, that is methotrexate. It is an inhibitor of tetrahydrofolate synthesis, which is required for purine and pyrimidine synthesis. When this is administered, there is inhibition of DNA synthesis, as a result of which they serve as anti-cancer drugs. The other inhibitors, replicative enzymes, mainly mammalian topoisomerases. I have not told you about it. They are etoposide and adriamycin. Then the next one, inhibitors that interact directly with DNA, that is actinomycin and mitomycin. They cross-link with the bases in the parental DNA, and they prevent DNA unwinding. So these are the inhibitors of eukaryotic DNA replication. Coming to inhibitors of prokaryotic replication, these are the antibiotics which have effect only on the bacteria, not on the human cells, and it inhibits DNA gyrase, which is an equivalent of topoisomerases. The last slide, comparison. You can read this. DNA in prokaryotes is circular, this is linear, single origin of replication, this is multiple origin of replication. DNA polymerase 3 is the major replicative enzyme, whereas delta and epsilon are the major replicative enzymes. Then we have all the speed of replication, 30 minutes in prokaryotes and 9 hours in eukaryotes. And a unique problem, the end replication problem which we face in eukaryotes is not present in prokaryotes. So with this, I have given some, see, this is the replication fork. This is much easier. When we ask replication fork with the components, you are supposed to write 4 components along with leading and lagging strand. I have played a video for you. So, 1 minute. Whether it's going to clear or not. Laser pointer. Yeah.
In this animation, we'll see the remarkable way our DNA is tightly packed up so that 6 feet of this long molecule fits into the microscopic nucleus of every cell. The process starts when DNA is wrapped around special protein molecules called histones. The combined loop of DNA and protein is called a nucleosome. Next, the nucleosomes are packaged into a thread. The end result is a fiber known as chromatin. This fiber is then looped and coiled yet again. Leading finally to the familiar shapes known as chromosomes, which can be seen in the nucleus of dividing cells. Chromosomes are not always present. They form around the time cells divide when the 2 copies of the cell's DNA need to be separated.
When DNA replicates, its strands are separated by the
DNA is a molecule made up of two strands, twisted around each other in a double helix shape. Each strand is made up of a sequence of 4 chemical bases, represented by the letters A, C, G, and T. The two strands are complementary. This means that wherever there's a T in one strand, there will be an A in the opposite strand, and wherever there's a C, there will be a G in the other strand. Each strand has a 5' end and a 3' end. The two strands run in opposite directions. This determines how each strand of DNA is replicated. The first step in DNA replication is to separate the two strands. This unzipping is done by an enzyme called helicase and results in the formation of a replication fork. The separated strands each provide a template for creating a new strand of DNA. An enzyme called primase starts the process. This enzyme makes a small piece of RNA called a primer. This marks the starting point for the construction of the new strand of DNA. An enzyme called DNA polymerase binds to the primer and will make the new strand of DNA. DNA polymerase can only add DNA bases in one direction, from the 5' end to the 3' end. One of the new strands of DNA, the leading strand, is made continuously, the DNA polymerase adding bases one by one in the 5' to 3' direction. The other strand, the lagging strand, cannot be made in this continuous way because it runs in the opposite direction. The DNA polymerase can therefore only make this strand in a series of small chunks called Okazaki fragments. Each fragment is started with an RNA primer. DNA polymerase then adds a short row of DNA bases in the 5' to 3' direction. The next primer is then added further down the lagging strand. Another Okazaki fragment is then made, and the process is repeated again. Once the new DNA has been made, the enzyme exonuclease removes all the RNA primers from both strands of DNA. Another DNA polymerase enzyme then fills in the gaps that are left behind with DNA. Finally, the enzyme DNA ligase seals up the fragments of DNA in both strands to form a continuous double strand. DNA replication is described as semi-conservative because each DNA molecule is made up of one old, conserved strand of DNA and one new one.
So this is the assignment for today. You can write the assessment for today's class. So 5 questions have been given. Study and then write on your own. I'm very particular about the diagram of the replication fork. It has to have 4 components along with the leading and lagging strand. Thank you for now. I'll continue in the next. Thank you.